Let's just take a look at the, troubleshooting VLAN as well as a private VLAN. Welcome. Now, the first thing you're going to see here is the guideline, the recommendation, okay? And I will detail it out for you as well, okay? Even though some of which you have done it, you have seen it, you understood it, it's just a review for you, but you're already part of this. And you already know how I do it right now. I go detailed, line by line, step by step, And so now for the VTP, you know what that is, right? Or no?
VTP, no.
Okay, this is what we call as a VLAN trunking protocol. Let me go ahead and draw it out for you and sort of kind of explain to you a little bit about VTP.
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, inside your environment, okay? You have these kind of, these are all the switches, by the way. Switch number 1, switch number 2, 3, and 4, right? Let's say this one go here and there, and this one go here and there. This is all your switches, okay? Now, the VLAN is a layer 2, it's not a layer 3, okay? And you already know the reason we do VLAN is because we want to separate or segregate the broadcast traffic, okay? All right? And so because of it, for VTP, without the VTP, before the VTP, okay, if you want this particular switch to have multiple VLAN, you have to go into every one of those switches, okay, to configure the VLAN. You with me?
Yep.
You have to. You have no choice, okay? All right? And so because of this, if you turn on the VTP, let's say, for example, okay, on the switch number one and number 2. If I go ahead and turn on the VTP, and make them as what we call them as a master, just say for example, okay. So because of that, I can go into either 1 or 2 or both, right, and create additional VLAN or start creating a VLAN. With the VTP, when I do that, what it does is going to try to send that update, which is the new VLAN that I create in 1 and 2, okay? And it's going to send it down to 3 and 4, okay? And 3 and 4 will receive that information and automatically create the database for those VLAN that I created up on 1 and 2. In other words, with VTP, I don't have to go to every single switch to configure the VLAN. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What that is, okay? Now, VLAN 1 is on by default, okay? And, of course, they say, because of that, when you turn on the VTP, okay, there are 2 separate versions will be there for you. However, version 1 will be the default version when you do configure VTP and don't actually spell out the version, okay? Unless you want to do a VTP version 2, then you must tell the configuration, say, I want to use VTP version number 2, then you have to configure that. Otherwise, if you just turn on the VTP version number 1, it's on by default. Now, what are the difference between the 2 versions? The version 1 only support, okay? Version 1 only support IPv4. And version 2, okay, will support IPv6, version 6. Are you doing IPv6 or only IPv4? You know what that is, right? Okay?
Yeah.
All right. That's a big difference. However, under version 2, there are more features that they also put onto the version 2, where version 1 VTP do not have it. But that's some of those features are minor. But the major one is between these 2 right here. Okay? So that's why they're doing that. All right. Now, because of this, okay, assuming again that, from the beginning, you know that VLAN number 1 is on by default, okay? And so the VTP will automatically communicate among these switches under the VTP. For VTP here is on the native VLAN, which is VLAN number 1 is on by default, okay? So that's what that is. And the connection between these switches, usually 3 go to 1, 3 go to 2, 4 go to 1. These are all the what we call the trunk, okay? Because trunk carry multiple VLAN. Okay, so that's what that is. And all the update, even VTP, they will go across these trunks. And by nature of that, they communicate on the VLAN 1, which is part of the trunking. Okay? So there you
Yeah.
see the next bullet right here. VLAN 1 is required because it's on by default. It's a management VLAN. Okay? It is required to be in the trunk so that they will, support VTP, because VTP carry those VTP information within the trunk based on a VLAN number 1. You still with me still, right? That's what that is.
Yes.
Okay? So it is important, right? So what else is here? Every switch operates in a VTP mode, because when you configure the VTP mode, okay, there are 3 different modes when you turn on the VTP, okay? Okay, so VTP mode, okay, the first thing is the server mode. If you don't specify anything, this server mode is equivalent to the master. Okay, everybody, when you turn on VTP on all these 4 switches, okay, the VTP version 1 is on by default, and then by default the mode, if you don't spell them out, they are all server mode. If you are in a server mode or the master mode, you can do anything you want. Okay. However, there are different modes after that. Okay, they call them as a client mode. Okay, and another mode we call them as a transparent mode. Okay, that's what that is. Okay, so there are different modes, but the client and the transparent is not the default. And let me tell you why. If you are the server mode, you can create the new VLAN, you can delete them, you can do a lot of things with it. You are the master, you can do anything. But if I change you to a client mode, you cannot create the VLAN. You can only receive the information from the server and then synchronize to your databases. That's all you can do on the client mode. Okay, you are not allowed to create any additional VLAN or anything. Okay, very limited. If you are in a transparent mode, okay, you technically do not participate in the VTP. You do not. Anything that I do, say for example, the switch number 4 happen to be a transparent mode, right? If you do that on a switch number 4, then of course, it does not, even if it gets an update from the server, it doesn't do anything on the database. In other words, it doesn't do anything. But whatever you configure within a switch number 4 for additional VLAN, but that's only local significant to the switch number 4. It has nothing to do with 1, 2, and 3. Okay, that's a transparent mode. Okay. So that's very important to understand VTP because of that. Okay. All right. A switch can only in one version, in one domain only. In other words, any given switch cannot belong to more than one domain. Okay. So that's the requirement for it. And they will also exchange the VTP update, okay, to other switches within the same domain, not among different domains, because sometimes inside your data center, if you separate a certain switches into a different domain, they don't work like that. They only within their own domain. Okay, only belong to one and one, never more than that. Okay, that's why they only exchange VTP only within the same domain only. Okay, and of course, they are recommend again on the very last bullet is that to configure all switches in the transparent mode. Okay, manually even. That's what they are doing. However, you don't have to take their recommendations. You can make them as a server client, okay, and then you can, based on that concept, and then from here, if this is your 1 and 2 in the core network, and 3 and 4 might be out there somewhere, then of course you make them as a client. They are not allowed to go in and change or make additional VLAN and so on and so forth. They have to get an update from the server, which is controlled by the core here. Okay, that's why. Okay, otherwise make them all transparent, then of course, eventually they are all local significant. It doesn't affect your network, because you never know. Because under the VTP, if let's say for example, okay, one of the feature within a VTP, we call them as a configuration revision number. Okay, so let's say for example, my configuration revision number, say at this moment, right, equal to maybe a 5. And then, of course, every time when you make the changes, the configuration revision number increase by 1. So within the, say, configuration revision number on all these switches are 5, which has a certain VLAN on it already, a production VLAN. Let's say, for example, if you not be careful and you not implement the security on these switches, let's say somebody else, just having a new switch or whatever switch they borrow from somewhere else, and then they connect it into your network. You see that? And so if that is the case here, let's say this is a new switch, right? Call it switch number 5, okay? And then, of course, with that, if they connect it to switch number 3, let's say this particular switch with the configuration revision number is, let's say, equal to like a 8, okay? And then, of course, within the switch, there are different VLAN now, okay? This is your production VLAN. Say your production VLAN could be VLAN 10, VLAN 20, VLAN 30, and say 40. Let's say those are your production VLAN within your switch 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now, all of a sudden, this new switch, if you do not be careful, you're not protecting your network, they could come into here and they connect it, and this guy, the configuration revision number equal 8. And then inside this databases, right, let's say they got the VLAN, say for example, they got the VLAN, say 100, 101, 102, and then so on, right? And so what happened is this is very dangerous, okay, is that when it's connected to it, the switch number 3 see the new configuration revision number, which is higher than what he has, and then with the different VLAN, and so what the switch number 3 does, it's going to take that and then start deleting all these production VLAN, okay, and then synchronize with all the bogus VLAN that's coming in from the new switch, and it will inform the switch 1, 2, and 4 about that too as well. And then all of a sudden, your production VLAN is all gone now. And with all the bogus VLAN, it's already in there, which is not a good thing. Does that make sense to you? Very dangerous. Okay? You have to be able to identify additional security, such as a BPDU guard, BPDU filter, all of that need to be configured so that if this is the case here, you don't want this to happen. Okay? Because this can wipe out all your production VLAN and then synchronize with all the bogus VLAN that you don't want. Okay? And eventually, all the network, everything will go down. Yeah, this is very dangerous. Okay, so that's why they recommend you change everything to the transparent instead. Okay, if you don't do it, and this is be very careful because you never know. Okay, switches interfaces are open, and somebody else just don't care, and they connect into your switch just like the way it is, and then of course you never know what they have. Okay, and if it's a higher revision number, they will synchronize. Okay, very dangerous. So that's why they recommend not to configure that. But if you wanted to, you can, absolutely. Yeah, there's a VTP version 3 is already available now, okay, which is a lot more enhancement that they did between version 1 and 2, okay. So what the version 3 does is that VTP originally is the Cisco proprietary, okay. It doesn't work between Cisco switches, but now with the version 3, what they do here is that they provide interoperability. Okay, that's what that is. And because the version 1 and version 2 are not interoperable, okay, now with the version 3, they allow both version 1 and 2 to be interoperable with the version 3. Okay, so that's the good thing. And so reduce the risk of unintended changes in the VTP domain. That's the one I just explained it to you. Now with the version 3, if that is the case, they have a feature now to prevent that from happening. Okay. That's what they say, reduce the risk of unintended changes in the VTP domain. Yeah. And they do now support the whole IEEE 802.1q, which is IEEE 802.1q. That is a standard, and they support a lot of VLAN, up to about 4,000 plus VLAN. You see that? So with the version 3, it's a lot better. Okay. And then, not even that, version 1 and version 2 does not support the private VLAN. However, version 3 now can also support carry information about the private VLAN as well. Before, no, they do not between version 1 and version 2. Okay? So this is a little bit of a comparison between all those versions. And when you configure, they have to be an interface-specific configuration. Database other than VLAN currently support only MST. This is to get you into a different VLAN now, different, spanning tree configurations. So MSC is one of them. They call them as a multiple spanning tree protocol. This one right over here. Oops. Hang on here. Okay.
Okay.
So it supports a different spanning tree here. Now, however, under here we have the IEEE 802.1d. That's the original spanning tree. And then now they came out with what we call as a rapid per VLAN spanning tree. Okay, and with that, now they call them as the MST. So there are three separate ones right here. You can sort of see that as well. Okay, but for version 3, that's all they think that currently support MST. But for version 1 and 2 do not support MST, but only support a rapid per VLAN spanning tree and the original 802.1q VLAN. Spanning tree. So that's what that is. Okay. Support feature specific server, which is again VTP. You gotta have a server there. Okay, and of course other enhancement security are actually with hidden and sequence password. In other words, they give you a little bit more security. Configuration. How are we gonna protect the VTP session? That is now version 3 is there to do that. Version 1 and 2, when they send the messages between those switches on the version 1 or version 2, they are in a clear text. Okay, but now with the version 3, oh yeah, you can now try to configure the enhanced security so that you can protect the VTP session among those switches. So some of these are coming out to support additional feature within that. And these are some of the highlights that they're telling you right over here. Okay. And then from the beginning here, right, and you can see that verify the status of the VTP. When you configure them, can we go in and do a show command? If you want to look at the counter on this, interface, password, status, and devices, by doing a show VTP, if you don't know more of these specifics, just do a question mark. And then after that, they'll give you all of these options. What do you want to look for? Counter, interface, pass, whatever you determine after that. Okay? So you can sort of see all of that as well. Once everything is up and running, you can verify if there are problem, issue, certain thing that you are looking for is not there. That's where your troubleshooting stops. Does that make sense? Okay?
Yes.
This is important. You got to have them up and running. Unless you don't have it and they got problem configuration to begin with, or if they're up and running and you turn on the management and they report that, hey, there are issues and so on and so forth. This is where some of these show command is very, very useful to kind of identify and use it and be able to find out exactly what the problem is. Okay? So that's what they are. First thing is here is show VTP status. You can look at it and you can see right away. When you have it up and running, it's right here. It says, version 3. Let's say you do. It will tell you. And then, of course, one other thing that I tell you a little bit earlier, configuration revision number. That's a very important parameter for VTP. Now, always start out with 0. Unless, you go in and start configure more VLAN and so on and so forth. And then eventually, configuration revision, when you finish, they're going to increment it by 1. And then it's synchronized down to the client. And then that will also have the same configuration revision number. That's a big number here. It's a primary number. At this moment, assuming nothing happened yet. Okay, and you can sort of see right over here, maximum VLAN that is supported. Okay, number of existing VLAN. At this moment, we don't have anything as of yet. You see that? But if you do, then of course, it will be there for you. One other thing that I haven't explained is this thing right here. If you make the switch to be a transparent, the whole concept of the transparent is that they do not participate into the spanning tree. Because of that, their configuration revision number on the transparent always stay at 0 no matter what. And the reason is they do not participate into the VTP update. If you make the switch to be a transparent mode, okay? You're still with me now, right? That's some of the definition I haven't explained until I see things and I will explain. Okay? All right. Domain name, they name it as a Cisco, anything you want to name it. Okay. The pruning default is disabled unless you want to prune. Okay. And of course, trap generation disabled by default. MD5 digest version 3, it will give you this kind of, hex number because of security. Okay. All right. Thanks. Version 2 we disable because we enable version 3. And you can see right over here. Okay. And then at the bottom they'll say last modified by this IP address, depending on which switch you are coming into, and at what date and what time based on the system clock. You can see it right over here as well. Okay. And so they say VTP version running and version 1. Even though from here I don't know what they are doing on this slide right here, but if you wanted to enable version 3, you probably have to specifically go in and say, I want to run version 3, and you must spell out. And they kept very much the same consistent, even if you are running version 2. You must configure that as well. Okay? So at this moment, we are assuming that version 1 and 2 are not there. We disable, and then we just specifically enable version 3, and they will tell you, okay, when you do a show VTP status. So some of these, now they're getting you into troubleshooting. That's what that is. Common problem with VTP. And now we're going to be able to see it. Okay? Following the most common symptom and causes, they tell you. Okay? It's because of that, right? Maybe missing configuration, and maybe some of the VLAN that is missing, or maybe too many VLAN and so on and so forth. Maybe update is not get received as expected by the client, or so on and so forth. And some of those kind of trouble, right, or the symptom that might cause your network not to receive the traffic via the certain VLAN. That's why. Yeah, this is where we're going to have to be able to identify and zoom down to the problem and be able to fix them immediately if we can. Okay. So some of the missing VLAN information they tell you right now. Okay. What are the costs? Okay. And of course, here goes the possible cause, and here goes the possible solution for it. And then if you read it, and you can tell right away, okay, up on the initial config, you can see right here, maybe because of the server may have partial VLAN configured, you mix and match, you're not consistent, and then of course, and then it gets synchronized down there, and you say, whoops, I supposed to create this VLAN and so on and so forth, but I forgot I create some other VLAN for whatever it is. Okay. So that's why you have to be careful with the configuration, and you almost have to have a documentation or the policy right there when you configure them. Okay? So make sure that any switch that belongs to VTP has a complete the VLAN list. In other words, you can go into any one of those switches, okay, and take a look at the VLAN databases, because they're supposed to receive the synchronization from the server if those are the switches that you make them as a client. Say, for example, even on the transparent, if you are manually configuring every one of them, you must go in and look at the databases. Do we have VLAN in the databases on that particular switch? If you are missing, and then of course now you got to go further and say, is it on VTP? Is it manual config? Is it transparent? And what's going on here? Okay? So you got to look at all of that. Okay? Or in this case, the second one say VLAN will add deleted individual at the VTP server. Okay. Hey, what VLAN did you delete? Did you inform them, or is it the VLAN that's not supposed to be deleted and you accidentally delete, or you intentionally, whatever it is. Okay, and that VLAN is supposed to be there, but now you just deleted it. Okay, so that's why they gotta be the same. So here it says make sure that whatever switches make sure you look at the VLAN databases. Make sure they are in the database, otherwise it doesn't work. Okay. And also, Cisco also saying the possible cause here is that because not all Cisco switches support what we call as an extended VLAN range. Now, most environments out there are not using 1,000 VLAN ranges. Anything that is bigger than 1,000, we call them as an extended VLAN range. Okay, from VLAN number 1 to VLAN number 999, that's a normal VLAN. But anything beyond that, starting with 1,000 to 2,000 and on, that's what we call as the extended VLAN range. Okay, and some Cisco switches do not support that high number of those VLANs. Okay, and if you're doing a lot more than that, then you got to be careful with those switches that have to be there to support extended VLAN range, which is in 1,000. Okay, and you can sort of see right here, both are numbers higher than 1,005. Okay, some switches do not even support that many. Then of course you got to be careful. Okay, that's all they're telling you here. Okay. And of course, make sure all switches are used as, same either, extended VLAN ranges if you are doing that. So that's what they are telling you. Okay. Too many VLAN. Too many VLAN. Because the server has a VLAN list and they're supposed to be synchronized or send an update down to the client. And the client must have identical VLAN ranges or the VLAN database with the same configuration revision number. Okay? And if there are so many switches that they have to travel through, okay, and if it's too big, 7 is your maximum. But if you are having bigger than that, some of the switches say way out there on the 8 or 9 hop or whatever, they may not make it here. And that's why they say if that is too many VLAN or too many issues and so on and so forth, consider make them a smaller domain, okay, and segregate them out into a different domain. If they having more than 8 or 9 hop away, because all the BPDU and all of that are all designed based on the 7 hop maximum on the switch hop. Okay, remember how the BPDU every 2 seconds they send it out from the root bridge and all go everywhere, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what that is. Okay.
Okay.
So make your VTP domain smaller if you can, if that is your issue. Update not received as expected. This is some of the recommendation or the common issue. Okay, and they are laid down here for you as well. Okay, domain name and password do not match among those switches. That's not good, because within the VTP configuration, you gotta have a domain name. Optionally, you can have a password configured so that you can protect the VTP, session. And if you don't have the same password among those switches, you know what's gonna happen. They don't receive an update because the password are not matching and so on and so forth. And the solution is that domain name and password have to match on all the switches within your VTP domain. Okay, and they are case sensitive. Be careful with that. Okay, and so or another issue here is that VTP versions are incompatible. What's that tell you? Hey, some switches I configure using VTP version 1 and some are version 2 and some are version 3. It's not a good scenario. So you have to be compatible, whatever version that you are doing. To be honest, if you're going to design your entire switch environment to be a version 3, then of course when you configure, make sure you spell it out. Or even version 2, spell them out. Okay? Otherwise, they will end up within, multiple, incompatible, inconsistent version of VTP. They don't match. And that's the major issue. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So there is no server in a domain. That would be another cause. Okay. So if you're gonna configure VTP, of course, if you don't say any VTP mode, then of course they are all server. Unless you change them all into the client without any server, they're telling you right over here that's not good. Okay. So therefore, make sure that it's there for you. Link to a VTP server is not trunking. In other words, you making the connection between the two switches as an access interface, not as a trunking interface. If you do that, then of course, absolutely, access interface, is not good because trunking carry multiple VLAN, including the native VLAN one. Okay, and so that required, okay, between the two switches. Otherwise, trunking will be there for you. If you don't, then be careful. If you make them not other than trunk. VLAN 1 is required for that to happen because they do carry information and communicate among the switches using the VLAN 1 as a native management VLAN. Okay. And of course, updates from VTP server do not get updated to the client. That would be an issue, cost, and here's a solution for it. Okay. So, and like I mentioned again, if the client already has a higher VTP version or the revision number, it will ignore the update because, say you can think about it. If my client, already have a configuration revision number 5 as a what it is, and all of a sudden the server send out a VTP update as a configuration revision number, say 4 or 3, right? Of course, the client see that and say, no, that's an older version. I don't care. I'm going to ignore that update. You see that? So they have to be consistent. Okay. And it's the only way to do that is verify all those switches. Make sure that they have the same databases, same VLAN, same configuration revision number, or else you're going to have a lot of issues, okay, because of that. It's all related to the VTP because they say update not received as expected because of some of those might be your possible cause for it. Okay? Troubleshooting layer 2. This is all about, because VTP, VLAN, all layer 2. So troubleshooting layer 2, you know, either Ethernet or, you know, SAN. It's a very, very simple process. It's the same between Ethernet and the SAN. Even for unified fabric and so on and so forth, they are almost similar, identical procedure. Okay? And there are a lot of show command that is available within the switches for you to verify, you know, the issue, if that is the case. Okay? So, now some of these steps that they recommend over here, you know, for troubleshooting as far as the layer 2. Of course, you know, always, physical connectivity always needs to be there, no matter what you look at. If I'm stuck getting a trouble ticket, okay, the first thing I probably go in, even if some of these are remote, to verify all the connectivity among those devices to begin with, because sometimes the connection between those two switches are somebody go in and shut down an interface, and they're not connected. Or maybe an interface has got issue as far as, you know, a hardware issue, a cabling issue, whatever it is. Okay? We have to be able to get to that first. So physical connectivity must be there. Okay? And then after that, when you verify the physical connectivity is already there, the next thing you can see right here, determine and verify the path between those devices. Okay? And of course, you can go further into those switches and verify the spanning tree protocol, convergence, as well as you know, all of that topology. And Cisco has a, you know, CDP, right? You know, Cisco Discovery Protocol.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, you can go in and do a SO CDP. Make sure that you can see the neighbor, because the CDP should be on by default. Okay. All right. And so it's very important to verify all of that. And these are all the, you know, steps that they recommend you to do. Okay. And then inside any one of those switches, make sure you look at their MAC addresses. Okay. Do they have, you know, MAC addresses? Is all there for you if you track them? Okay. Absolutely. And then at this moment, if you know for a fact that a certain interface or interfaces among those switches are not there, you can tell right away from the verified physical connectivity. Okay, and it's not there, MAC addresses is not there, and of course traffic path is not there, and therefore it's really the problem. Okay, so these are some of the steps that they recommend you to kind of look at. And then of course, you know, lots of show command, by the way, if you look at it. If you look at the port up and running, can you go in and do a show interface and get down to the Ethernet and whatever the interface they are, like Q1, Q2, Q3? Yes, absolutely. You expect that from your documentation, from your topology. So make sure they are up and running. That's all they're telling you. And then when you look at those interfaces, within those interfaces, right, make sure you look at the input and output. Do we have any error? Okay. Input error, output error, CRC error. Okay. All of that error within the interface, when you look at it, they are big. You can sort of see that. Okay. And of course, if you expect those connections between the switches to be a trunking, make sure that they are trunked between them. And then of course, whatever VLAN that you allow or not allow in and out of those trunks must make sure they are consistent. If you don't allow the certain VLAN from this switch into another switch, and then another switch you allow and this one you are not, that's not a good configuration because they are inconsistent. Okay, the trunking must be the same between those two switches as trunk. You allow or not allow whatever VLAN or VLAN ranges, make sure they are in a consistent configuration. Otherwise, you will run into problems. Okay? And how we verify this is show interface, Ethernet, whatever, switch port or trunk. Those are the show command that is available for us to do troubleshooting. Very important. A lot of us are doing the troubleshooting every day. These are the commands that are pretty standard. Okay? And then, of course, have the document. Understand what does your topology look like. That's very important. Otherwise, without this, you have no idea what connected to where. Okay? That's why we know the topology, we understand it, and we can verify it right away. Okay? And then, of course, you show CDP neighbor if you expect that. Okay? CDP is Cisco proprietary, but now they make this not CDP as a standard, but they already have a standard, equivalent to the CDP already a standard, okay, called an LLDP, Link Layer Discovery Protocol. That is already available out there if you have a Cisco switch connected to the non-Cisco switches. You don't have to use CDP because Cisco proprietary. You can use LLDP, okay, to do very much equivalent among Cisco and non-Cisco switches. So there we go. Okay, lots of these things that you have to be able to understand and and do that. And these are the steps that they tell you to verify when you determine that. Okay, make sure that the spanning tree are there, and make sure they converge, make sure they are stable. You can go in and verify this. So spanning tree VLAN and down to the certain VLAN that you expect. So spanning tree interface and then down to the interface ID and look at more detail of it. A lot of these tools within the operating system is already there for you to verify, to troubleshoot, and so on and so forth. Okay. And then also when you verify the spanning tree path, okay, the command it says show spanning tree block port. If you expect a certain interface or interfaces to be in a blocking, then of course you can get down to that and it will show you those interfaces supposed to be in a blocking state. Okay, so that's what that is. And then of course watch for the thing when you do show it, right? It will show you something like a BLK. BLK is really stand for broken. That's what that is. Okay. And if you know for a fact that a certain path that is not good, and then when you show it, it'll say BLK. Okay, it's really stand for. It's called a block port, right? But it's really, some people say it's a broken port or whatever it is. Okay, so you can sort of see those kind of concepts when you do a show it. The only way to do that is in the lab, and then you can verify that they intentionally, trying to do something and emulate the failure for you. And then, of course, MAC addresses. Hey, if they are up and running, if they learn each other, whatever it is, from the switch even, you can go in and look at the MAC address table. You expect to see those, it's there for you. If not, you will know right away. Okay? So, yeah. And then, of course, for fabric path, that's a little different. Okay? Fabric path is a layer 2 feature. When you enable fabric path, technically, you are replacing the spanning tree within your environment. And they do require licensing to do that. Okay, when you enable fabric path, the certain protocol is there for you, like ISIS, intermediate system to intermediate system. It's already part of the fabric path. And that's why they replace the spanning tree. And within the fabric path, there are no flooding and no broadcast. Okay, only active endpoint need to communicate via the fabric path will be active. We call them as a conversational MAC address learning only. Not everywhere else. Okay, so it's a little bit different. All right. And so MAC address table you can see right here, and then of course learning mode you can verify expecting a certain VLAN or so on and so forth. Either via fabric path or not, you can use that command to verify those endpoints that is actively out there on the fabric path, if that's what you're looking at. Okay, so that's a lot of commands that's actually there for you. We can also track those MAC addresses even. It's the same thing here again by command doing a sole port channel summary. It's another one. Because a lot of people, doing port channel, virtual port channel. And if you are going to, verify to make sure your port channel is up and running, then of course you can do a sole port channel summary, and of course it will be up and running instead of a suspended or down. That's not good. Okay? You can also go in and do a sole IP off command to make sure even right over here from the layer 3, you can go in and do a sole IP off, and they will maintain the MAC address table for that. Okay? So lots of sole commands to verify and also do troubleshooting with the sole command like this. Okay? And so even right here, they tell you a little bit about notification of a MAC flapping, because the MAC flapping basically means a connection between the endpoint or the switch to that switch or endpoint to the switch. It's kind of sort of going up and down, up and down. We don't know what the problem is. It could be interface and so on, right? So if that is the case here, if they flapping, then of course command MAC address table notification MAC move. Okay, you can use that command and then be able to do that. Okay, Or you can show MAC address table notification MAC move, and will display those kind of MAC address statistics out there for you, because they could be unstable, they move, or interface going up and down, you know, and that's definitely going to affect the spanning tree, because all interfaces on the switches are all participate in the spanning tree. And if those kind of endpoint or whatever the problem might be, right? And that's definitely going to affect, particularly on the op table, which is the MAC address table. Okay, so it's definitely going to be some sort of a problem, and you got to be able to identify and zoom it down, and then be able to either shut it down or do something with that. Otherwise, you know, your network eventually, you know, become very unstable because of that. So it's just a little bit into that. Okay, now we know the VLAN. We already know the VLAN. Okay, by default, oh yeah, only VLAN 1 on by default. And some, high-end VLAN is also there by default, because they are, you know, a default VLAN. Okay, and you can see that, you know, up to about 4,000 plus VLAN now. It's already available on the Nexus if you want to configure. Okay, and they don't require a license. No, they do not. Okay, they all come with the operating system. Okay, and of course, you know, like I said, inside the Nexus, there are certain VLAN that is actually reserved for system use. Okay, but it still gives you thousands and thousands of other VLAN that you want to do. Okay, and so it's all about the operating system. Okay, and so you can modify, you can create, delete, and do anything if you are going to do that. Absolutely. Just know VLAN 1 is the default VLAN. And that VLAN you cannot delete, you cannot create, it's on by default, you cannot modify, you cannot delete, you cannot change it. It's a management VLAN. Anything else you can create, delete, modify, whatever you want. Okay? Just know that those are the ranges out there. And now VDC, because I have multiple VDC that we talked earlier, okay? And every one of those VDC I can do up to 4,000 plus VLAN per VDC even. Okay, and then because the VDC we talked earlier is not it's isolated, and yeah, among the VDC I can overlap those VLAN if I want to do so, but they have nothing to do with each other among those VDC. Even I use the same VLAN ranges among those VDC, right? They don't have anything to do with each other because they are completely isolated. Okay, so that's what that is. Okay, pretty easy.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, we already know this, okay? On the router, if you create multiple VLAN and these are the switches that are not capable of doing a layer 3, then of course, by nature of the VLAN, okay, they are not allowed communication by default as far as without a layer 3. Okay, you know that already, right, Matthias? Okay?
Yes. Yes.
So because of this, these two switches consist of those VLAN, and we even interconnect them together. They're not allowed any communication because they're not support layer 3. If that's the case, you need something like this. They call them as a router on a stick. So that between VLAN 10 and 20, go into the switch, go into the router, process, do routing, and then of course come out and talk to the VLAN 20. Because these switches we assume might not support layer 3. However, if you look at the picture right over here, we call it a multi-layer switch. And the Nexus 7000 are there to support that. Now, because of this, layer 3 is actually a piece of a special memory within the supervisor that we already know for a fact that it's there to support inter-VLAN routing. So now, because of this, if the traffic coming into here, right, if this guy is that, then of course they process and send out a VLAN 20. So now 10, 20 can talk. However, because of that, layer 3, they're not like a router. They don't have a dedicated interfaces, okay? They are virtual interfaces within the supervisor because they have a special piece of memory that does the layer 3. And so for us to do so, we have to go in and start creating what we call them as a SVI, which is a switch virtual interface. You with me now, right? Okay?
Yep. Yep.
You have to, man. Okay? They're not like a router, okay? Okay, they don't have a real physical interface like the picture on the left here. Okay, but in here, yeah, they do have a layer 3 feature within the soup, and then of course we don't have a physical interface. And if we want to do inter-VLAN routing, we have to just create the SVI interfaces. And when we create the SVI interfaces, we name them the same as the VLAN ID ranges for management. Say, for example, SVI interface VLAN 10, SVI interface VLAN 20, SVI interface VLAN 30, 40, if we have those kind of VLAN. Okay, and then after that, if there are single switch like this, within these two VLAN, we technically don't need to turn on routing here. Unless you have another switch just like this, and you interconnect them like this, then of course here's your VLAN 10, VLAN 20 in here too. If you are going to say VLAN 10 here, need to talk VLAN 20, not on the same switch here, but on a different switches. And now, because of this here, you must configure routing protocol. That is between these two switches that contain just the same thing. You with me now, right? Okay?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Either static route or dynamic routing or whatever, but if it's within the single switch between those two VLAN, you technically don't need to turn on routing routing protocol, my point. Okay? But you still got to create this, okay, among those switches, for sure. All right, show you a little bit about that interface. So interface VLAN 10, see that? If you look at it, troubleshooting again, it is down. You see that right there? Line protocol is down and so on and so forth. Now, immediately you can see right away, hey, there's problems. Okay? We don't know what it is. You know what? Right here, the first thing I do is that why is my VLAN, interface VLAN 100 down? First thing I do here is that I jump right into this and I do a show VLAN database. Is my VLAN 100 exists inside my database? That's the first thing I check. And then after that, I will also check the interface, which is might be a trunking, not a layer 3, because the SVI, to make sure that that interface is up and running. If that interface physically, for that VLAN is down, then of course your logical VLAN SVI will be down as well. Okay. So that's why you have to verify all of that. And then of course more of the same here. When you look at more into this config, and you can sort of space down, and you can sort of see at this moment nothing. Everything is 0. For both input, output doesn't really matter because it's down. It doesn't have any traffic. And you can verify all of this, absolutely. And these are the checklists for you to verify the VLAN. Yeah, you can see right over here where it says check, a troubleshooting checklist, verify the physical, like I said earlier, always physical connectivity. Are they there for you? Yes or no? One time they are there, the next thing you're going to verify is, hey, are they receive the same information? Look at the databases. When you check the connection, it's already there. Check the VLAN databases, check the data path, and make sure they are there. And these are the commands for you to sort of see that right here. So VLAN ID, so VLAN all port, and text, all of that. Okay, it's just a lot of CLI command there for you to verify. Once you verify with the physical, the data path, and so on and so forth, you got to be able to do all these, tool that is available within the Nexus, okay, for you to verify all of that. And of course, some of the common VLAN issue, they will tell you again, cannot create the VLAN, interface is down, whatever. These are some of the common symptoms they tell you right over here, okay, on the Nexus. So you have to be able to go in and start creating and verify the VLAN databases and make sure when you do so, interfaces got to be up. If they're not, they are down, which means that you might be missing or whatever, okay. So, and of course, with that, they say cannot create the VLAN. These are the possible causes, and these are the solutions for it. And you can read it, okay, from the beginning. Okay, since we already know what VLAN is, and we already know, and these are the more specific, that they zoomed you down to might be the possible cause in my environment. Okay? And so just be careful when I said earlier here, okay, because some of the VDC, okay, are more important than the other, but by default they are all share the resources equally. So if you already know that a certain VDC that need more VLAN than the other, they may not have enough resources within that because they are default resources. And then go in and start do something about it. You with me on this one now, right? This is what a lot of things are happening. It's all dependent on what's out there. Okay? Because of that, because some VDC, a lot more VLAN that you needed than the other, that you only need a few, right? And then of course the resources are equally. Go in and modify the resources so that you can have enough resources allocated to that VDC. Okay? And that's what that is here, really. That's what they're talking about. Okay? And of course, reserve VLAN. Of course, when you're trying to look at this right here as a system reserve VLAN and you're trying to get into those reserve VLAN and you do so, it's not going to happen. Okay, even though there are some ranges that reserve VLAN, but that still gives you thousands and thousands of VLAN that you can create. So just don't mess with the reserve VLAN because Nexus has a little bit more reserved system VLAN than iOS switches. Okay, so that's really what they come down to. Interface is down. Why? Number one, you're trying to create the VLAN interface and it's not in the database. What's that? It's not going to happen. So make sure that in the VLAN database, make sure the VLAN exists, make sure they are active, so that now you want to create the SVI for that VLAN, it should be there for you. Otherwise, no, you can't. It won't happen. Okay? And or the second possible concept is that no interfaces on the VLAN are in the forwarding state. In other words, they're not in the database, they're not in the forwarding state as far as the spanning tree goes. You can go in and verify with the SO VLAN internal, and then it'll tell you. Okay? So that's the solution. The next thing here, one or more services prevent a VLAN interface from coming up. Okay? So lots of issue here if that is what your problem is, because the thing is I cannot create my VLAN interface. Not in the database, whatever physical interface between those switches are down as a trunk or whatever it is, you can't do anything. Okay? And it will give you a problem where you're trying to configure more and more into that. That's why we always have to verify, make sure they are active, they are up and running, they're connected, and now you should be able to go ahead and create the VLAN. Okay? Or, they're up and running, they should be able to communicate among those switches with that. And I think it's more understand here, where it says interface VLAN is still down. See, that interface is in a VRF, a wrong VRF. Now, we talk about VRF. If you are going to assign a certain interface down to that VRF, chances are you have to retype that IP address from the default VRF into that specific VRF. Otherwise, not good. Okay?
Okay.
So, cannot create the SVI VLAN. You know what? Under the Nexus, anything that you do on the Nexus, you got a feature. Even with the license, it's already there in the admin or default. From the non-admin, non-default, if you are going to do this, always on the Nexus, always feature interface VLAN. Otherwise, you cannot create the SVI on the Nexus, okay? Because you got to enable the feature always, okay? And here's a command right here, feature interface VLAN, and then after that, now you show it, it will show you the feature interface VLAN is enabled. Now you should be able to go in and create the SVI VLAN, okay? Even though, assuming that, your VLAN is already in the database, everything is there, okay? And now, why is it cannot let me do that? Because the feature might not be enabled. Even if you enable the feature, and of course it allows you to create the VLAN, and now it's down. Why? Because the interfaces are not up, the VLAN is not active, whatever. A lot of issues. So all the things have to be in synchronized, otherwise you can't do it. Okay?